How's it going, everybody? Me tucked in here. Looks good. Let's get some gloves on. So, we were last reading Matthias. He was running secretly into the wood towards Church Ninians, so that way he could get the tapestry back that had Martin on it. The Spirit of Redwall. So that's where we left off. He said goodbye to Cornfield and a bunch of others, but he used Shadow's rope to get over the walls and scaled them, repelled very easily. All right. At the camp of Clooney the Scourge, the Rat's army was girding itself up for a war. Weapons were being sharpened upon churchyard headstones. Under the critical eye of Redtooth, a band of rodents was gnawing off a length of planking from a rickety lich gate fence at the rear of the church. Others collected stones to provide ammunition for slings, while some coiled ropes about their bodies. Inside the church, Clooney sat up in the choir loft, the image of barbaric authority. He held the scourging tail in one paw while gripping the other. What excuse me. He held the scourging tail in one claw while gripped in the other his war standard, topped by the ferret skull with the addition of the tattered tapestry square depicting Martin the warrior. He gazed proudly at it as his armor addressed him for war. They were just saying Clooney looks really scary right now, and he's adding all the pieces to his armor. Sorry, that paragraph stumbled me. At Clooney's feet were the Vole family. They were bound. He flicked his tail at them and sneered. Ha! Look at me, you spineless little creatures. Did you ever think such a leader of fighting animals as Clooney the Scourge? Soon I will have every creature that moves down on its bended knees to me. Mr. Abram Vole glared defiantly at his captor. You filthy great Bill's rat! Why, I'll... Silence! Clooney roared. Hold your tongue, Val, or I will deal with you and your family here and now before I set out to conquer my precious abbey. Do you see my new battle flag? That is Martin the Warrior? Yes, the same one who is supposed to protect the dawning old abbot and his... Whew, witless mob of mice. Now Martin is mine. It is more fitting that he travels at the head of the real warriors. He will lead us to victory. Clooney ranted and raved, the light madness in his eyes. The light of madness in his eyes. Death and desolation shall be the reward for those who dare to stand against Clooney. The only ones I will spare are those I might choose to serve me. Mrs. Vole struggled upright, but was forced back down by Scumnose and Fangburn. Chattering with rage, she shouted at Clooney, You'll never bend Redwall, you evil will. To your evil will, good will prevail. You'll see, Clooney. We are tied up, but our minds are free. Crack! Clooney lashed out with his long tail, sending the Vole family flat upon the floor. Mr. Abram Rolls struggled to shield his wife and son with his body as the tail flailed out for a second time. A touching little speech, Vole, but you were wrong. But you wronged me. I didn't want to capture the spirit of Redwall. I meant to kill it, to take these whiny creatures out of my sight, lock them up in their hut at the back, leave them to imagine what their fate will be when I return. Colin Vole shrieked in terror. His mother and father struggled bravely as they were dragged off. Redtooth marched in and saluted Clooney. The horde is ready to march, Chief. A rat armor set the war helmet firmly upon Clooney's head. He snapped the visor down and kicked aside the rat who had fixed the poisoned barb to his tail. Striding out into the churchyard, Clooney climbed onto the wrecked gatepost. His fierce eye glazed about the mighty army. Black rats, brown rats, gray rats, pie rats, skull king weasel, furgative stoats, and sinuous ferrets all gathered around, their weapons glistening and dripping in the rain. As Clooney exhorted them, they roared back their frenzied replies. Where does Clooney's army go? Redwall, Redwall. Where is the law of Clooney? Kill, kill, kill. Who will lead you to this victory? Clooney the Scourge. Clooney, Clooney. Springing down among his army, the warlord waved the banner high overhead. With a mighty shout, the horde of Clooney the Scourge marched out upon the road to Redwall Abbey. Well, Clooney's preparing for war. Should be intense. Ragear was hopelessly lost. Separated from Clooney, he could not think for himself, scuttling off down the road in wrong directions. He had kept going in that state of funk. He kept going into a state of funk, frightened by the sound of birds chirping. Suddenly, he rushed blindly into Mossflower Wood and pressed on deeper and deeper and deeper into the strange, new territory. It was only with the arrival of the pale dawn that he stopped, slumping down into some bushes, exhausted, soaking wet, and dispirited. He curled up into a wretched, damp ball and slept. Sometime about mid-morning, Ragear was awakened by the sound of footsteps. As Matthias tramped past, he lay low, silently congratulating himself. What a find! A little mouse he would take him prisoner and bring him back alive to Clooney. That way he could gain some prestige. Clooney might even forget that he had panicked and deserted at the Abbey. With that, Ragear is right behind Matthias. I'm going to grab some water. Chat, I'm going to show you to the fountain. And give me 30 seconds. I'll be right back. I filled up water, I just gotta go get it. Water. Did I put my gloves on again? Alright, let's finish this chapter. Finish this chapter. Finish. Ragier was hopelessly lost. Oh, we got that. And he was running with Matthias, and he was asleep on the side of the road, and Matthias walked by, and he found that he got super lucky, and that he'll try and capture the mouse for Clooney, so that way he forgets he deserted. Matthias risked a swift glance over his shoulder. There was a rat clumsily trying to stalk him, a fat, awkward-looking rodent, but nevertheless an enemy. The young mouse strode onwards, his mind working coolly and without fear, confident that he could handle the situation. Breaking twigs underfoot, stumbling ineptly from tree to tree, Ragier watched the mouse and fantasized. There are 6 of them, Chief. They tried sounding me, but I fought like the devil. Then I says to myself, Ragier says, "You're better capture at least one of them and fetch him back for the chief to question." Then Clooney will say to me, "Ragier, good old Ragier, I knew I could depend on you. Why do you suppose I took you along in the first place? Mangefur, bring food and wine for my old pal, Ragier the Brave." Yeah. Ha. Yes. Then I'll pat the chief on the back and say, "By Satan's whiskers, you old rodent. You never thought of retiring and letting me lead the horde? Why, with a gallant warrior like me, come thwack! A thwack! A long, whippy branch sprang forward suddenly. It crashed into Ragier's head, pole-axing him. Matthias stepped out of hiding, rubbing his hands, and it had been a strain holding the branch back for so long. Uncoiled, Shadow's climbing rope, he bound Ragier paw and claw to the sturdy oak. The young mouse could not afford to wait around for the rat to regain his senses. There was still a deal of traveling to be done. He pressed onwards, leaving his senseless enemy bound to the tree. Nice. The rain stopped within minutes. The hot June sun burst down on Mossflower as if an apology for its absence. Clouds of steaming mist arose from the woodland floor, mingling with the golden shafts slanting down through the trees. The birds began singing. Each flower and blade of grass was decked out in jeweled pedantry and necklaces of sparkling raindrops. The sudden warmth over Matthias cheering him onwards, humming a tune beneath his breath as he strode out with a will almost breaking from the cover of trees straight out onto the flat meadow. He checked himself just in time. Directly ahead lay an overgrown area which was neither pasture nor meadow. It was the common land that had once belonged to the curtilage of St. Ninian's. Matthias crouched at the edge of the woods. He would see the back of the church. There were 10 or 12 rats patrolling some distance away. Before he dealt with that problem, there was still common land to be crossed. Clumps of thistle and slight ground hummocks would be used as his only cover. The young mouse spoke his thoughts aloud. This could present a little problem. A strange voice answered, Problem? A little problem? Well, it was not a fully grown adult problem. Well, at least it's not a fully grown adult problem. Matthias squeaked aloud in fright. Whirling about, he looked for the source of the mystery voice. There was no one about. Taking a grip, he squared his shoulders and called out boldly, Come out here this instant and show yourself, the voice answered. It seems from directly in front of you. Show yourself, myself, indeed. How many pairs of eyes do you want, young fella? Fine state of affairs, bless them souls. What? Matthias narrowed his eyes and looked hard. Still, nothing. I warn you. Come out and show yourself, he shouted. I'm in no mood for playing games. I think we're about to meet a hare. They're fun people. Hares are good people. They serve a little bit of story time. Within story time, the hares serve the badgers, the striped dogs. They are the lords of Salmonstrong, and they make swords and stuff there from meteorites. And it's in a really late book, and we'll get there in about like 18 books. But it's a fun backstory to know this now. All right. As if by magic, a lanky hare popped up right beside Matthias. A odd patchwork creature. His fur was ashen hue. I didn't smoke any cigarettes today, chat. I'm proud of myself. And everyone else. Listeners. Feelers. Watchers. His fur was ashen hue with bolts of gray and light brown flecked white on the underbelly. He was very tall, with a formidable hefty hind legs and a comical pouched face topped by two immense ears. Like this. Which flopped about of their own accord. With a courtly, old-fashioned manner, the hare made a leg bowing, graceful, made a leg in an old with a courtly, old-fashioned manner. The hare made a leg, bowing gracefully. His voice stared a slightly affected quaver. Basil Stagg, hare, at your service, sir. Expert scout, hind leg fighter, wilderness guide, and camouflage specialist. Liberator of tender young crops, carrots, lettuce, and other such strangely beasts. Pray tell me who I have the pleasure of addressing, and please state the nature of your young little problem. Matthias decided that the particular hare was either slightly mad or tipsy, but his outmoded manner was certainly friendly. The young mouse humored him accordingly, bowing low with a paw to his waist. Good day to you, Mr. Basil Stagg. Hare, my name is Matthias, and I am a novice in the order of Redwall mice. My immediate problem is to cross this land to the church over yonder without being discovered by the rats who are guarding. Basil Stag Stare tapped one of his huge feet gently on the ground. Matthias, he laughed. What an odd name, to be sure. The young mouse laughed as he replied, not half as odd as your name. Who ever heard of a hare called Basil Stag? The hare disappeared momentarily. He reappeared next to Matthias. Well, hare's the family name, don't you know? My parents named me Basil, though the old matter one me called Columbine Ains. Always longed for a young lass, she did. But why stag? Matthias inquired. Noble creature, stags. The hare sighed. Did I ever tell you I wanted to be one? A magnificent royal stag with great coat hanger antlers. So I went down the jolly old river one new night and christened myself a stag. Had two toads and a newt as my witness. Oh, yes. Matthias was unable to hide his merriment. He sat down and chuckled. Basil started chuckling too. He sat down beside Matthias. I think I'm going to be like you, my boy, he cried. Now, what about getting you to that church? Why is there nothing simpler? Why, there's nothing simpler. But enough time for that later, young Rip. How, how about telling me what brings you here? I love listening to you. I love listening to a good yarn, you know? By the way, I love. Okay, let me reread this one. Just this paragraph. Okay. I think I'm going to be like you, my boy, he cried. Now, what about getting you to that church? There's something simpler, but not enough time for that later. Young Rip, how about telling me what brings you here? I love listening to a good yarn, you know. But oh, by the way, I hope you like fennel and oatcakes. Of course you do. You'll share lunch with me, of course. You'll like yourselves, young and like yourselves. And in a flash, Basil had lugged a haversack from the undergrowth and was spreading a repast on the grass between them. For the next half hour, Matthias related his story between mouthfuls of the hare's tasty luncheon. Basil listened intently, interrupting only when he required clarification on some point. Matthias finished his tale and sat back awaiting comment. Basil's long ears flopped up and down like railway signals as he digested his food and his friend's information. Rats. I knew they'd come eventually. Though intelligent on me grapevine, you know? Could it feel in the old ears too as for Redwall? I know it will. Excellent type. Abbot Mortimer. Splendid chap. I heard the Joseph bell tolling out the sanctuary message. Even had some cheeky old hedgehog telling me to run for it. Couldn't go, of course. Dear me, no. Whew. It's a long chapter. We got this. Of course, Matthias agreed. He'd taken erroneously to the hare. Basil sprang up, smart in military fashion, and saluted. Right, first things first. Must get you across the church, young feller. Mouse, I say. That green thingamajig you've got wearing habit is it? Capital camouflage. You just try lying down around the shadows. Believe me, if you'd had trouble finding yourself, top hole cover, absolutely. Basil stopped and ruminated for a moment. His ears lay flat and stood up and then pointed in opposite directions. He continued, now, when you've liberated your bit of tapestry or whatever, make straight back across the common. Excuse me. I'll be waiting, never fear. Good. Well, come on, young bucko. We can't sit about here all day like two fat rabbits at a celery chew. Up and at 'em. Quick's the word and sharp's the action. Nip about, youngin'. Nip about a bit, youngin'. Again Basil vanished, only to reappear some 3 yards out. Again, Basil vanished, only to reappear 3 yards out on the common. Come on, Matthias. Tack to the left and wheel to the right. Bob and weave, duck and wiggle. Look, it's easy. Matthias hurried to follow, keeping in mind Basil's instructions. Surprisingly, they seemed to work perfectly, and before long, the two friends had covered nearly 3/4 of the common land. Matthias could even count the whiskers on some of the rats. He covered his paw with his stifle he covered his paw to stifle a giggle. It really, it's really very simple, isn't it, Basil? How am I doing? The hare bobbed up beside him. Capital, bung-ho. Like, duck to water. Young fella, flop me ears if you aren't the best pupil I've ever had. By the way, is there anything I can do to help? Matthias stopped and looked serious. Yes, there is, Basil. But I feel reluctant to ask to involve yourself in my fight. Basil Stagg snorted, Rubbish! My fight indeed. Do you fondly image that I'd sit here munching on that old nose bag while some great ugly rodent and his band of yahoos run around conquering my countryside? Huh. Never let it be said that in a mess that Basil Stagg at the eve and not the young mouse's understanding of anything the nature. Matthias expressed his wishes to the stag. Would it be possible for you to create some kind of diversion while getting the tapestry? Could you keep the rats occupied, Basil? The hare switched his ears confidently. Say no more, lady. Say no more, laddie. You've come to the right stag. Listen carefully. You cut across the flank to the left. They took a piece of planking out of the fence by the lich gate. That's where you'll slide through. When you got where you came from, then make you exit the same way. I'll be somewhere about keeping an eye out for you. Right off you go. Matthias went swiftly, still remembering to bob and weave as Basil had taught him. He made it with ease to the fence, glancing back to check on his companion. Basil went into a speedy run, cleared the fence up in a bound, and tapped the nearest rat on the back. I said, old thing, what's his leader fella? Clooney? Looney? Whatever you call him? Completely staggered. The rat stood slack-jawed. Basil left him and popped him right up beside another rat. Whew, dear, dear. Don't you chaps ever take a bath? Well, listen, here. You dreadful creature. Do you realize that you smell to high heaven? By the way, did your parents ever call you Pongo? Or did they smell as bad as you? Oh my god. These hairs are roasting. Or did they smell as bad as you? It took the rats centuries and moments to recover from their surprise. They let out yells of rage and tried to seize the impudent hare. It was like trying to catch smoke with their claws. Basil ran rings around them, keeping up a steady stream of insults and adding to the rats' bad temper. They shouted angrily, Grab the big skinny rabbits, lads! Big skinny rabbit yourself, cat's meat! I'll stick his damper guts on my pike. Temper, temper, tut-tut, such language. If your mothers could hear you now. Blast, he's as slippery as a greased pig. Some of my best friends are greased pigs. Bottle nose. Oops, missed me again. You old butterfingers, you. Matthias chuckled quietly and shook his head in admiration. He watched 12 rats falling over each other and bumping into heads as they chased his friend around the common land. Every now and then Basil would pause, strike his noble stag attitude, letting the rats go within a whisker of him, and he would kick off with his long, powerful legs and send them all sprawling into a heap. Adding insult to injury, he danced around the fallen sentries, sprinkling them with daisies around as until they arose, cursing him and to continue the chase. Wary that there might be other rats about, Matthias climbed into the church through a broken stained glass window, dropped into the ladies' chapel. The young mouse wrinkled his nose in disgust. The beautiful church was rank with heavy odors of rats. Furniture was overturned, sanctuary broken, walls stained, pages torn from hymn books lay about everywhere. Where was the fragment of tapestry? And where was Clooney with the rest of his army? Instant realization sent a leaden weight through the pit of Matthias' stomach. They'd gone to attack Redwall. Clooney must have tapestry, must have the tapestry with him. Matthias felt sick to as the thought. Hastily, he climbed back out the window. Halfway across to the fence, he noticed a small shed. Somebody was pounding upon it, its locked door, and calling, "Matthias, quick, over here, in the hut." Through a small gap in the door, he could see the Vole family. Their paws were tightly bound. Colin Vole huddled piteously on some dirty sacking in a corner, while Abram Vole and his wife battered away at the door with both their paws. Matthias called out enough to crack them. "Stop banging, stay quiet. I'll have you out of there as soon as I can break the lock." Matthias cast around for something that would force the padlock in grasp. Doubtless some rats had the keys, but there was no time for that. By a stroke of luck, he found an iron spike that had been thrown at Basil by one of the rats. Forcing the spike into the hoop of the lock, Matthias levered away. "It's not budging," he muttered. From the corner, Colin Vole wept. "Oh, we'll be locked in here until Clooney gets back. I don't want to face him again. Do something, Matthias. Save me." Despite the Vole's wretched predicament, Matthias could not help showing his contempt for Colin. Stop whining, Colin. It doesn't help matters, and keep your voice down. There may still be rats about. Try to be brave like your mom and dad. In his frustration, Matthias swung the pike at the lock. It bounced off, lodging deep between the grasp of wood. He grunted in exertion, pulling savagely towards him soon enough. Taken off balance, he went head over tail. The hasp had broken. It came along with bringing with it some twisted, rusty screws. The door swung open. Drawing his dagger, Matthias hastily cut the bindings from the Voles. Issuing orders, he worked. "Follow me and do as I say. Move as quickly and quietly as you can." Cautiously, they slid down the broken fence and began making their way across the common. There was no sight of the rat sentries. Matthias guessed they were off somewhere trying to catch and the elusive hare. It was midday. It was mid-afternoon. The common was peaceful and sunny. Butterflies perched on thistle flowers, and grasshoppers serenaded each other with their ceaseless serenades. Abram Vole insisted on shaking Matthias by the paw and congratulating him. "Matthias, thank you with all my heart for saving my family. We thought we were doomed." The young rescuer looked grim. "We're not back home yet. And by means, Mr. Vole, and if we do not make it back to the Abbey, I dread to think what we may find." Miss Vole nodded vigorously. Aye, we saw them leave. The church in the march on Redwall. Clooney was leading the villains, and Martin's pitcher tied to his banner. Oh my, you never seen so many wild rascals in all your born days. Matthias' brow creased with a worried frown. I wish I hadn't sneaked off from the Abbey this morning. I do hope Constance and all the defenders on the alert. I do hope Constance has all the offenders on the alert. It was only seconds later that Matthias wished he had also been on the alert. The sentry rats had become tired of chasing Basil. They wearily made their way out of the woods and back to the common land. They sat in the grass behind the low hammock, taking a break together. Matthias and the Vole family walked straight into the middle of them. Ooh, perilous situation. Walking straight into those rats right there. That's the way things go sometimes. Alright. One more chapter, chat. And listeners. And watchers. And feelers. Or 4 things. There's probably 5 or 6 more. 7 or 8. Don't hold me to a thing. You can hold me to being a man, a Marine, and a child of God. Chat, I'm almost out of water. I'm gonna go get some more. I'll walk around for a second. I'm gonna give you guys the break here. You guys can stare at this. Look at the lake. We should think of a name for the lake. I was thinking Bob. Like Bob's Burgers. Be right back, chat. Getting water. Alright, I'm back, chat. We're back. All right, let's read this last chapter. In our last chapter, we met the hare, Basil Stag. He seems cool. I like the hares. Clooney massed his forces in the roadside ditch outside Redwall Abbey. He stood well back in the meadow behind the ditch, surrounded by his captains. Here he was out of range. He would direct the entire operation, but at the moment he was not having things all his own way. For a start, he did not have many archers. Rats are notoriously bad at bow making and fletching arrows. From the ramparts of Redwall, the field of the harvest mice sent down volley after volley of tiny arrows, which, while had no great killing power, were causing much wounding and discomfort in the ranks of Clooney's horde. Standing beneath his banner, which was rammed into the earth, Clooney clacked his tail. Redtooth, Deathclaw, Darkclaw, tell the sling throwers to stand ready. When I give the signal, I want to see a good heavy barrage of stones hitting the top of the parapet. That'll make them keep their heads down. Frogblood and Scumnose, you two organize the gangs with scaling ladders and grappling hooks. See, they're all get up on top of the wall and no blunders. The rat captains marched off to the young ditch to make ready. Clooney held his tail up to give the signal. On top of the wall, the mouse archers kept their relentless hail of arrows in the ditch. Constance strode up and down, holding a heavy cudgel in her paws as she urged them on. That's the stuff. Give it to 'em. Mice, keep those bows twanging. Knowing the supply of arrows was not endless, the badger looked at the heaps of rubble and stone on the parapet. Brother Rufus, Formwell, be ready to shift a lot overboard at a moment's notice. A hail of sharp stones and pebbles whizzed upwards, rats rattling against the masonry as Clooney waved his tail in the meadow below. Taken unawares, several mice were felled and a mole lay stunned. Get your heads down, everyone. Lie flat, Constance shouted. The defenders instantly obeyed as the showers of missiles increased. Running along the ramparts, double bent, the abbot cried, "Stretcher bearers, over here! Help me to get the casualties down to the cloisters." Winfried the otter lay alongside Constance and whispered to her, "Hear the scraping? Clooney's got his lot putting something against the walls. My guess he'll be trying to climb up while we've got the lie down." Even as Winfrey spoke, two grappling hooks went climbing, with climbing ropes attached, came clanging over the parapet and lodged in the joints. "Stay low, my friends," whispered Constance. "Give them a bit of time to get off the ground. I want plenty of rats to get high up before we make a move. Pass the word." Redtooth waved his cutlass and laughed wildly. "Your plan is working, Chief. Look, there's old Fangburn and his gang is nearly at the top of the walls." Clooney lifted his visor to get a better view. It was too late to call out what he saw happen next. A veritable avalanche of rocks and Earth and rocks cascaded over the parapet. It smashed straight into the main ladder. Rats screamed aloud and grasped at the midair as they were swept from the ladder onto the roadside. The ladder fell sideways, canyoning into one another, and that had been set up beside it. As both ladders fell, there were scenes of mass chaos, badly wounded and shocked. The survivors on the roadway tried to crawl back to the safety of the ditch, only to be buried deep beneath the rubble thundering down upon them. Many lay trapped beneath the heavy ladders that had fallen. The air resounded with screams and moans. Clooney ranted and swore. Leaving his standard, he rushed across the meadow, taking the ditch in a single leap. He darted across the road, grasping a hanging rope, and began hauling himself up. Claw over claw, the stationary beaver gnawed at the standards of the ropes as the rope parted. Clooney fell from a fair height and sprawled out on the dusty road in an undignified heap. Clooney flung himself into the ditch, regrouping his sling throwers and a few archers. He ordered them to await his command. At the top of the wall, the last climbing rope had been severed. A hearty cheer rent the air as the Redwall defenders broke clover to survey their handiwork. Fire! Clooney roared. Cool. I had something on the screen. We should have just enough battery to finish this chapter. Fire! Clooney roared. Stones and arrows sped upward with devastating effect. Several mice and wilderness cried out and fell. The results heartened Clooney. All was not lost. He began devising a new plan. In Mossflower, Ragier was struggling with the rope that bound him to the oak tree. He could hear far-off sounds, which only meant one thing. His chief was attacking the abbey. Straining his neck downwards at an uncomfortable angle, Ragier was able to get his teeth through the tough climbing rope. If he could manage to break himself, he might be able to sneak back and join the horde. He could mingle with them and deny he had ever been missing. Clooney might also take lenient view of his desertion if he could distinguish himself during the battle. The rope tasted foul. He could tell its scent that it once belonged to Shadow. He never liked that surly, poker-faced rodent. Ragier congratulated himself as his teeth bit another strand. Ha! Take that rope. And that, no rope can keep Ragier prisoner for long. Hee hee hee. Poor old Shadow. If only you could see your lovely rope now. Ragier straightened up for a moment to ease his neck. Laughter died on his lips. A horrible gurgle bubbled from his throat. Icy claws and terror gripped his chest. Swaying hypnotically, a foot from his face was the biggest, strongest, most evil-looking adder that he had ever seen born. The rat was completely petrified. The breath seemed to freeze in his lungs. The sinister head moved in a lazy rhythm, its forked tongue flickering endlessly in and out. and in and out, and like the round bead-like jet eyes never leaving his for an instant. Its voice was dry, rustling in an autumn breeze, as Medeus, as Medeus, it hissed. So kind of you to untie yourself, rat. Come with me. I'll show you your eternity. Asmodeus. Asmodeus. It struck with lightning speed. All that Rhaegar felt was a sudden sharp sting in the side of his neck. His limbs became flaccid, his eyes sight shrouded by a dark mist. The last words Rhaegar ever heard on this earth were uttered in the adder's subliminant hiss. Asmodeus. Asmodeus. Clooney scratched the floor of the ditch with his claw. It was all there, the design for his next move. He would attack the abbey secretly from the mossflower side. It would be a surprise maneuver. A hand-picked squad led by him would carry out the mission. Dressed in Clooney's war helmet and armor, Red Tooth would stay back in the meadow. His disguise would be sufficient to fool the defenders from the distant walls. The rat in the ditch the rats in the ditch were ordered to continue pressing home the attack until Clooney and his party scaled the walls from behind and fought their way across the grounds to the abbey gates. After issuing orders to his remaining captains, Clooney, accompanied by a score of assorted rats, weasels, stoats, and ferrets, crept off along the course of the ditch. It would be a surprise maneuver. A hand-picked squad by him would carry out the mission. Dressed in Clooney's war helmet and armor, Redtooth would stay back in the meadow. His disguise would be sufficient to fool defenders from the distance of the high walls. Rats in the ditch were ordered to continue pressing home until Clooney had his party scaled the walls and fought their way across the grounds to open the abbey gates. After issuing orders to his remaining captains, Clooney, accompanied by a score of assorted rats, weasels, stoats, and we just read that. No? Yes, we did. Sorry. We read a paragraph. They carried with them a long silver plank from St. Ninian's Lich Gate. Silently, they traveled in a northern direction until they were out of sight of the walls. Climbing out of the ditch, they crossed the road into Mossflower. Clooney sat on a fallen tree trunk and told his squad that what was required of them. I will wait here with the plank carriers. The rest of you split up and search the area for big, high trees growing near the abbey walls. Make sure that the tree you pick is higher than the wall itself and not too difficult to climb. Got that? Right, get going. Clooney watched them strike off into the undergrowth. His previous good mood had deserted him. He was working himself into a foul temper by the end of the day's performance by his mighty conquering horde, shown up by the simple tactics of woodland creatures and mice. He snorted and dug his powerful claws into the rotten tree trunk, sending beetles and woodlice scurrying as he tore sending beetles and woodlice scurrying as he tore out chunks of spongy timber. Oh, he had them frightened at first. As a commander, he knew the power of fright. But once they had gained the upper hand in the initial skirmish, the mice lost their fear and became bolder. That was when the battle had started to go against them. He had scored one or two small victories, but they were nothing to brag about. He couldn't use them as an example to put his heart on his troops. Clooney's only hope was that the mice would overcome and eventually make a mistake. It was the old waiting game. Just let them make one slip, and then that was all he needed. Meanwhile, he had a greater obstacle to overcome. The mice, the walls. It was to become. It was the same. It was those accursed walls that were ruining his plans. Clooney tore viciously at the rotting log until great chunks of it flew in through the air. If this scheme worked, he wouldn't have to worry about the walls anymore. He would be inside the wall like a fox among day-old chickens. Clooney sniffed the air. He sensed he told him the searchers were returning. Chief Thief and Ferret named Kilconey crashed out from the underbush. They were trembling and twitching. Both looked as if they had been badly scarred. It was some time before Clooney could get any sense out of them. Chief Thief spoke haltedly and glancing fearfully over his shoulder. We lost a bit, Chief. We lost where? Clooney snarled. Clooney pointed at the shanky dark claw. Over that way. Yon honor. Didn't we find a shape strap and oak? Was it close to the wall? Chief Thief shook his head. No, Chief, it was further out, into the woods. Look what I found wrapped around the trunk. He held out the chewed and broken rope. Clooney snatched it. It looks like Shadow's climbing rope. He's dead. Were you fools trying to tie me up? Clooney whimpered painfully. It's Ragu, Your Honor. Clooney seized the pair and shook them suddenly. Have you both gone raving mad? Do you hear me? You frightened of that fool Ragu? Chief Thief fell to his knees, throbbing. But you didn't see him, Chief. He was just lying there, his face all swollen, his tongue sticking out, gone purple. Ugh, horrible. He was all sorts of bloated. And it was like... Kilconey bobbed his head vigorously in agreement. Aye, 'twas. Didn't see him with my very own eyes, sir. Poor old Ragier. Him gone backwards all the time. Gone backwards, echoed Clooney. Indeed he was. You and your man here says to me there's something pulling Ragier along. But we couldn't see what it was in the bushes, so we pulled to the side, and what did we see? Well, what did you see? Barked Clooney irritably. Kilconey stopped and shuddered. He spoke incredulously, as he was unable to believe himself. We saw the biggest snake you ever clapped your eyes on, the father of all serpents. He had Rager's body by the feet and was dragging it backwards. Clooney's eyes widened. What did this serpent do to you when it saw you? It let go of Rager and looked at us. The serpent stared at us and it kept saying, Asmodeus, Asmodeus. Clooney scratched his head in a sharp, dirty claw. Asmodeus? What is that supposed to mean? Do you know, sir? 'Tis the dreaded name of the devil himself, wailed the ferret. I know, because me old mother told me that when she ever looked at a serpent in the eye, so easy as me mate, she thief, says I. No, I don't. Run for your life, and that's exactly what we did, sir. You never know how horrible it was. I'd rather be tied blazing barn back there, so I would. The great scaling body of it. Quiet, fool, said Clooney. I think the others are coming. Now straighten yourselves up and not a word to anyone about this serpent thing. You'll feel my serpent across your backs. Clooney's long tail waved menacingly under her nose. They took his point. A weasel called Scourge came running up. He reported smartly with great efficiency. High tier near the abbey. Wall, chief, elm, much higher than the wall of branches jutting out. Just the job for climbing. How far to the tree? Clooney asked. About 10 minutes march to the east, Scragg replied. Well, then the rest of the party arrived back. Clooney had them form up in a single file. They marched eastward at a smart pace. The high tree did not improve to be an elm, an ancient giant covered in gnarled bumps and handy branches. Clooney seized up and exactly what he wanted, the perfect distance from the wall. He turned on his commando squad. Listen, we're going to climb this tree. When we get up there, high enough, I find a strong branch and we bridge the wall with the plank. If we go carefully, the mice won't suspect a thing. Before we can gather their wits about them, we'll be inside Redwall. Woo! That was a good read. I'll show you the next picture. Oh. Oh. Oh, the next chapter is super short. 19. Well, that was an excellent stream today. Thank you, everyone who came by to listen, to watch, to chat. I didn't chat, but if you wanted to later. Gloves are off. I'll leave you with this. Thank you, Yuki Ann, for telling me about YouTube. I've fixed that, and now I'm uploading to YouTube, and I'll add my link to my page. I'll do that tomorrow. Today I figured out how to do the YouTube part. I got a couple videos uploaded. It takes a little bit of time. So if anyone needs any help with that, I can help you. Yuki Ann turned me on to that. Thank you so much. And I would say follow her on Twitch, because I will too. Alright, everybody. Stay safe out there. It's a jungle out there. Do, 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 do.